college graduates with stereotypically useless majors. What did you end up doing with your life? Story 1 once had a guy in my company with a political science major running a team of programmers. The guy started as a developer intern and quickly grew up the ranks. Story 2 animation major here. I pretty much just draw for cash. Turns out I wasn't good enough to make it into business, but good enough to draw some titties. That's pretty much what I have to show for it now. NSFW, for those that asked. Story 3, you're majoring in film. Have fun waiting tables jokes on you. Literally every company is looking for somebody who could do video for them, and the freelance market is insane. I watch movies for college and make more money than most of my friends with more useful majors, except for the engineers, but duh. Edit some tips for getting started. 1, you do not need to move to NYCLA to find a plethora of video work. If you're only looking at job postings, you're looking in the wrong places. Find people who want videos. Local businesses, real estate agents, vloggers, bands, a middle-aged couple who want some professional-looking footage of their remodeled basement for real. You'd be surprised, video jobs are everywhere. Tackle some of those. And the corporate jobs come easy, too, if you're just getting your start. Absolutely make some videos for free. A small portfolio goes an extremely long way. Literally, a couple months of that with a part-time job elsewhere will be the most lucrative loss-leading strategy of your life. I know it sucks, but you'll get started a lot faster than somebody who refused to do it. And it's not like you have to spend 40 hours a week working an unpaid internship. You set your own pace and do what you can. 3, once you start charging rates. Refuse to work for free. You already have experience. You already have exposure. Already have clients. You don't need to work with that douchebag. Forget everything in writing. There are a lot of shitty people in the world. A signed contract is a lot harder to skirt than a handshake. 5, be bold. Be confident. Your opinion is a professional opinion. Suggest your ideas. Take those more experimental shots. Invest yourself in making the video of your client's dreams. Have fun with it. People like working with you, and that means repeat customers. 6, a good camera, lens kit, lighting kit, and audio setup are great, but don't bankrupt yourself on them if you're just getting started. I got my start on a Canon Rebel and a free trial of Final Cut Pro. Upgrade when you can afford to. Story 4, art history with a biology major and got my master's in museum studies. I work at an art history website making art history fun for people who don't think art and museums are for them. Though the dream job is collections manager at a museum, so I can touch all those things regular visitors can't. Edit since people are interested. Hey race, the website sartle.com. Story 5, ancient history. Bomb disposal. Edit, went into the army officer. Degree was completely useless apart from some good dinner conversation topics and being able to write a semi-competent report. Story 6, English literature. Specifically in 18th century British literature and philosophy, and pro-slavery literature during the antebellum period. I'm a high school teacher, but I was on the professor track to begin with. It's so much less stressful, more fun, and has much better pay with summers off as a teacher. The major taught me to critically think from multiple perspectives, communicate in a clear and effective way, and actually how to write and how to think about writing. I also get to integrate my love of philosophy of language in my lessons in pedagogy. I love my career. Story 7, majored in Buddhism, then taught English, then worked in logistics, then tourism, then renewable energy, then energy efficiency, then Salesforce consulting, and now am an in-house Salesforce admin. Story 8, as someone who's going into their senior year of high school, reading this thread actually showed me some awesome options for college majors that I didn't know existed. Edit, I honestly forgot I had read it, but I just came back to find a ton of upvotes and other users giving me helpful advice, which is just absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Story 9, I expect some past philosophy majors to reply here. If any of you guys want to tell me how your life was after philosophy, I'm all ears. I'm really leaning toward majoring in philosophy. Starting freshman year this fall at a top school. My logic is that I might head down the law path, but even if I don't want to write or teach, I'd love to hear what you'd have to say. Story 10, I have a degree in history, am under 30, and I already run a museum. It's not for everyone, and I work my off, but if you are willing to put the work, you can be successful. Story 11, international business. Hardly any schools even have it. Basically business management with a foreign language and few other things. Was told it would be useless outside of this state by people who also majored in this. I was a purchaser for a pharmaceutical company, did some marketing for Xerox, and have settled as a client relations manager for a shipping company. Story 12, got BS in film. Discovered the freelance life isn't for me. Decided within 6 months of graduating to join the Air Force for some kind of cyber job. Ended up with cybersecurity. Love every moment of it. And now I'm working on my master's in cybersecurity. Gonna do 20 years, get a pension, get a federal job, and work that until I can get a second pension. Then start withdrawing from my retirement account. I'm contributing significantly into and do whatever I want for the rest of my life while being supported on 3 passive incomes. For if Social Security is still around by then. Story 13, not me, but my wife. When we met, she was getting a degree in radio, TV, and film. I was a bio major and jokingly mocked her major often. I work in a vet medicine lab, and she works for a pharma advertising agency. She makes more than double what I do. Guess who is laughing now, lol. Story 14, jazz performance and arranging. I teach kids how to play drums and take a middle school band once a week and gig on the regular. Life is so comfortable, and the work is lucrative enough to my standards to afford a 3-day work week and just be with friends, write music, and play in the music teams at my church. Pursuing that degree is the best choice I ever made. The key is staying stubborn to onky pick music-related work, networking, and practicing until you're good. Story 15, art history. Brief stint as a paralegal, longer stint in a non-technical role in the tech industry. And now I'm a locksmith in training. I'm a fine example of all that can go wrong when you let bright, academically inclined teenagers blindly choose a course of study without asking them what they might actually want to do all day. I do not recommend my particular career path unless you're really desperate to make interesting small talk at cocktail parties. Story 16, fine arts. It was so good I did law right after. That was so good I worked for 10 years and quit. And I'm back at university doing animation and video. 3rd time's a charm. I'd rather be making little movies for modest money than work in an office full of clowns, although clown college is reasonably appealing. Story 17, psychology here. I work on trains all day. They don't tell you you'll need at least a master's to make any money in the psych field. Just kidding. Literally everyone told me that, including my cell phone salesman brother and real estate agent sister-in-law, who met each other at college, where they were psych majors. Story 18, got a degree in journalism, the slightly more targeted version of getting a degree in English. I do security at fine art museums. I'm glad it worked out this way. Reporting is more important than ever, but I learned I didn't want my job to be my life. I make a living wage in a fascinating institution, get to meet artists and people from all over, and have an ethical job mission, and I get to leave all my work at the door, take nothing home. Story 19, bachelor's degree in criminology, master's degree in counterterrorism, intelligence policing, master's of international security. I make relaxation music on YouTube. Story 20, did a useless undergraduate degree. Try to fix it by getting on an unrelated postgraduate degree in a vocational subject. Turns out that was too much a leap, no idea how I got accepted onto that course. I couldn't catch people up and ended up hating the second subject. Pulled off a distinction in my dissertation, but average marks in exams, not good under pressure. Brain blanks out. That was 3 years of patchy employment ago. I am now almost 28, still no prospects, been trying to start again by studying web development from home. I wish I never had to wake up again. I have spent my entire life fighting and fear my entire adult life will now be about dealing with past mistakes. Couldn't kill myself because my boyfriend killed himself earlier this year, as did my mother's father when she was a kid. So I know firsthand what level of agony it causes. The only thing I have going for me is that my boyfriend left me his pension lump sum, but that hardly makes up for my work history. I know I've had my peak already and wish I could just leave it here. Life isn't for everybody. Story 21, I was an English major, got a job as an e-commerce copywriter out of college, which led to a job in a digital marketing agency, which led me to where I am now, helping to manage and produce digital content for a large private university. Despite its reputation, I think the English major is perfectly useful, for the record. Clear, effective written communication is critical to just about every industry at some stage or another. And if I've learned one thing in my professional life, it's that one shouldn't take the ability to write or even read effectively for granted. Story 22, I'm not sure how to translate this, but I have a diploma in theology. You can study this at an academic university here, not the hardcore church Bible stuff. I work as editor, permanent employee for a big publishing company and kind of make books. That was what I always wanted to do. So I ended up perfectly fine. For a lot of positions, you don't have to study the actual subject, but work on your profile while you are in college. Story 23, majored in international studies with a focus on global health. I actually just graduated, but later this year, I'll be working for a metropolitan public health agency. Story 24, history major, in grad school to get my master's in library science while working full-time as a librarian. I knew going into my BA that I wanted to be a librarian, so I majored in something interesting to me rather than something useful. Story 25, English literature. I am now a video editor and marketer for our company's in-house show and about to be the head of marketing for our new podcast production division. And I also own my own business as an accessibility assessor for those who want to make their buildings better for those with disabilities, as well as giving presentations on accessibility and disability awareness. Story 26. So by reading the results, it sounds like almost everybody either works in their field of study or works in a different field, but is a successful, well-paid professional of some kind. Imagine that there is a lot of self-selection bias going on here. People who weren't successful were too embarrassed to answer, and the people who were successful wanted to stick it to the people who think that impractical majors are a waste. But maybe the truth is that impractical majors just aren't bad at all if the student applies themselves and works hard to be successful. Another question that could be asked based off of these results: do you think that your impractical major helped get you where you are today? Did the skill sets acquired in 4 years of school help you perform your job functions significantly? Would you not have been much worse off with just a high school degree? Would you have been better off with a degree in the field that you're in? Story 27. Psych major, then got my master's in school counseling. Still not a counselor, but I am working in a mental health clinic, doing counseling for 17 hours with a few holidays off. Don't work, go work for Medi-Cal. Story 28. I have my associates in biblical studies and working on my bachelor's in advanced theological studies, minoring in biblical counseling. I'm a youth pastor and making barely enough to get by, but I wouldn't give up this job for anything. I care so much for all the kids I pastor over, and I'm so happy and thankful for my job. Story 29. I have a degree in fine art and love my career. My job is to engrave designs by hand onto granite monuments, and I work for 4 different shops. I did not train for the technique in school and previously didn't know of its existence. I fell into the job sort of by chance, and I can't imagine one that I would enjoy any better. I have been at it for 20 years. I also learned to apply gold leafing to sandblasted names and designs. Story 30. I majored in English writing. Currently working as a teacher, and I love it. That was always my goal. A word in for some other useless. Major's my roommate, majored in psychology with a minor in gerontology, and she's currently in graduate school to become an occupational therapist, which is a super good career once you get it. My friends who majored in English and aren't teaching are all in law school, as are a few of my friends who majored in philosophy and gender and women's studies. I've said this before on Reddit, but majors like English, history, philo, religious studies, psych, women's studies, gender and women's studies aren't useless, even though you can't just go down to the philosophy factory and get a job. However, you have to be smart about your chosen major and career path. Major in English and plan to get a job writing novels. Probably not going to work right away. Major in English with a minor in education and completing the student teaching program. That'll work. Major in history and spend your summers working as a lifeguard and binge drinking. Bad idea. Major in history. Minor in Spanish. Spend your summers volunteering for a local history museum or doing archives research with professors. And connect in undergrad with organizations working on community outreach and historiography. Good idea. Major in psychology and hope ITL work like accounting, where you just get an internship, then an offer with a Big 4 firm. Bad idea. Major in psych with a minor in gero, early childhood, or another concentration. Work in the psych department all 4 years. Get an internship at a lab and do grunt work with saliva samples for a semester, planning the whole time to go to grad school. Good idea. Major in gender and women's studies and plan to just get a job. Being a woman. Bad idea. Double major in gender and women's studies and philosophy with the intent to go to law school. Learning how to write and reason from philo and planning to be a public defender specializing in family court and domestic abuse cases. Good idea. Story 31. English major. Everyone told me I needed to be a teacher with my major, and I said I wanted to make money writing. Now I get paid to write marketing content for businesses. Story 32. Communications major. Originally wanted to be a journalist, parlayed that education into working in a call center, and then parlayed that experience into becoming a business systems analyst. All in all, it worked out great. Story 33. I majored in anatomy and physiology, which tend to be pretty useless if you're not going to be an anatomist or physiologist. Now I'm working in a Japanese government office doing translation and other random stuff. Go figure. Story 34. English major. Now, a translator wouldn't be so bad if I didn't find the work to be boring and unfulfilling. Pay isn't great either unless you work directly for the EU or something, but I have no desire to move out of my hometown, and they usually require knowledge of French and or German in addition to English. Neither of which I'm really interested in mastering, currently figuring out what else to do. I'm in my 30s. Brushing up on math, and looking into learning how to code after that. If it wasn't for my $30K student debt ID, probably just go back to school part-time. Can't really afford it at the moment, but hey, I've got a permanent contract at my job, so it ain't all bad. Never have to worry about being able to pay the rent, and I can save about $100 a month while still having some money left for fun stuff like the occasional night out or video games, yay Steam sales. Story 35. Degree in media studies. To further sour this degree, I graduated just as Facebook opened up to edu emails. So my study of the media didn't include social media diploma public relations. I worked for 7 years in marketing, then falling into product management, 12 years after graduating, and the product manager for several news services. It somehow came back to my degree, but I don't know how I got here. Story 36. I have 2 degrees in anthropology. I work as a project manager for a cultural resources management firm. We do archaeological survey work. My grandma once told me she thought I was doomed to never have a job. Story 37. Went back to school at 30 to finish my BFA, and not just any BFA, a BFA at a multidisciplinary, strongly conceptual school of contemporary art. I spent the first year working as a preparator at a gallery, while doing a decent amount of freelance gigs locally and eventually with art fairs that would send me around the world. When I made a major move with no real prospect in the art world nearby, I was able to get a job doing stained glass restoration in a studio that really valued the multiple skills I had from a studio artist background. After a year of that, and a change in my relationship that freed me up to explore options elsewhere, I've been offered a gig as a preparator at a university museum in St. Louis, and have an interview in the next week for a university museum in Madison, Wisconsin. 3 years out of school, and getting a professional job in a legit museum environment is pretty big in the art world. So I'm feeling pretty good about it and don't much regret the path I took. Story 38. Bachelor's and master's degrees in flute performance. I'm a flute maker. I design and build flutes for a living and travel the world selling them. Best job ever. Story 39. Worthless political science degree that I got because everyone said all you need is a college degree and people will be lining up to give you high-paying jobs. Experience taught me a hard lesson: college degree is worthless unless it imparts to you marketable skills. I ended up self-teaching myself web design and e-commerce. So now I am an e-commerce manager and freelance web designer. Story 40. History political science. Doing business development, sales, marketing, anything that's client-facing requires qualitative analysis, clear communication, written content creation, but it's not easy and the degree just hampers it all. Unless you're really sure you want to go to NGOs or something, or politics ID, rather work for tobacco or weapons manufacturers, or teaching ID, rather do politics. Don't do this to yourself. Story 41. English literature degree. I work in private medical insurance, but am really good at speed reading insurance documents and pulling out the salient points for reviews. So yay me. Story 42. Asian studies major with a minor in Korean and poli-sci, and am teaching English in South Korea. I'm eventually going to go back to school, though, and get a marketing degree so that I can work for an entertainment company in South Korea. I should be bilingual by the time I go back to school. Story 43. Did a master's degree in history. Actually worked as a historian for a few years. Eventually went back to university and did a PhD in film studies. Now teach film studies at university. Story 44. My older sister was political science and English undergraduate. With a graduate degree in management, she ran the dean's office at a high-profile school in NYC for a few years, quit, visited all 50 U.S. states, and has been traveling the world with her husband for the past year. Story 45. I was a philosophy and political science major. My plan was always to go to law school, which I did. Philosophy was a great building block for that, taking dense, abstract readings and trying to distill them down to a few principles was very similar to briefing cases in law school. I also just found philosophy very interesting. All that said, it's just a building block. There's nothing that I could have done with that major alone that didn't involve more schooling. Political science was truly useless. So my plan worked out just fine because I knew I wanted to go to law school. But if I had to do over again, I absolutely would have taken something useful for my BA at minimum. I would have replaced poli-sci with something else. Accounting, chemistry, programming. I still could have gone to law school with any of those, but I would have had a useful fallback position if I had a change of heart. Take something useful, kids, please. Story 46. Computer graphics design major. Currently high-level tech support for top-dollar clients at one of the top-ranked tech firms. From an application standpoint, I'm doing the exact same thing I was taught to do: solve problems. From an aesthetic standpoint, I deal with emails and people instead of art and people. Story 47. Went to college with no idea what I wanted to do. Did first year undecided. Then chose criminal justice. I figured cops make decent money, and I didn't want to be in an office all day. Things changed, and I no longer want to be a cop. Now, I have a low-paying office job, and I'm 34, and still paying off student loans. Story 48. Political science degree. Unix and Linux systems engineer. I started with a job fixing computers at Best Buy in college, and just fell into it. It didn't make sense to start a new career by the time I graduated. Story 49. Not me personally, but I was involved in training a lot of our graduate program intake. We work in banking technology, and about 50 of the roles are non-programming based business analyst type roles or planning, QA, testing, etc. I found that almost without exception, the best performers in these roles weren't the finance guys or the econ majors or even those with some software background. It was the ones with philosophy degrees. Story 50 bachelor's degree in psych. Took a position working in emergency psychiatric admissions. Made 53 more than the social workers. Eventually used my experience to get into physician assistant school. And now I practice medicine in urgent care and emergency medicine, making 388 more than social workers. If you ever decide to be a social worker, marry rich if you want to eat. Story 51 English writing major lit plus creative writing graduated. Worked for a member of Congress. Went to law school. Work as an attorney at law firm now. I do have to say, having a major in one of the humanities is great for critical thinking, and the writing skills you develop, especially as a writing major, are incredibly valuable for many white-collar professions. Story 52 Criminal justice degree. Did criminal justice stuff for a few years, then realized that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. Ended up a VP of operations in a large financial firm, a 20-year career. Story 53 graphic design and animation. Now I'm a cake decorator. I can't complain though. Still gives me the creative outlet, and I live comfortably. I also get to skip out on crunching deadlines. Story 54 political science. Seems to be one of the most popular majors in this thread. As a political science major, I don't know what to think of this. First, I didn't think it was so stereotypically useless, which makes me feel sad. Second, I'm pleased that it's so applicable to so many different and successful career paths. Story 55 not me, but my brother was an art major. He works at the Museum of Modern Art, buying and selling artwork. They send him to Europe and a few other countries to go look at art and buy it for them. So as an art major, being paid to go to other countries to look at art seems ideal to me. Story 56 physics, and ended up in medicine. Useless LPT med schools will take basically any major as long as you complete the prereqs one way or another. And if you can spin it well, you can turn your useless major into an interesting advantage in the application process. Story 57 geography major, not even GIS. I got a generic sales job after college, but recently got a six-figure salary sales position at a large digital mapping and location data company because they saw me as the only candidate who had a genuine interest in location mapping by having a geography major. It still feels great to ask my grandpa if he still thinks it's a worthless degree. Story 58, I got out of undergrad from a non-prestigious college with a degree in psychology. I never thought of grad school as I'm the first in the family to go to college, and I don't know my way around. And B, I had a 3.2 GPA that I was told too low for psych grad school. I got out of college in 3 years and went to work as a house father in a Catholic orphanage, got fired, went to work for a shady tutoring service that paid me 0 hours to help developmentally delayed folks learn life skills. The service charged the state $50,000. Had a number of other go-nowhere jobs and decided to do a Hail Mary strategy, and I enrolled in an MBA program 2 nights per week, 2 years total. I also started to look for other work and found a flunky position with a health insurance company that had tuition reimbursement as a benefit after 90 days. Took it, and after 3 years migrated to a big 8 accounting consulting firm and moved to the West Coast. Went to work for a hospital client and wiggled my way up the ladder. Got shot down in corporate politics, so partnered up with an entrepreneur, and we did great business renting out high-value equipment to small rural hospitals on a mobile basis. Got addicted to cocaine, got divorced, sold my share of the company, gazed at my navel for a year, took on a construction and operation project for a surgery center overseas. As that ended, I slipped into hospital administration BC. I was the only one on the island who qualified. I knew it would be a gateway to regular employment, and it was. $120K first year, $150K year 2, left in year 5 to go back to mainland, and went from hospital to hospital, always in small rural towns. Topped out at $180K plus car, got fired, not an unusual scenario for very small hospitals, relocated, retrained at the state's expense, and now I'm a licensed drug and alcohol counselor. I'm an older dude, so I collect Social Security, and between what I make as a counselor and what my wife makes 15 years younger than I, we have a family income of just over $100K. At my undergrad orals, I asked for career direction, and I was told try sales. Story 59 creative writing major. I like writing, but am too anxious to publish. My jobs after college dropped me in a luxury real estate. Not my career goal, but better than nothing. Story 60 English major. I've worked in aerospace, renewable energy, and now explosives. I do procurement. Turns out reading Middle English translates well to reading the terms conditions one that April. With the showers suit the drought of March hath pursed to the root. No terms or conditions other than those stated herein. and no agreement or understanding in any way modifying the terms and conditions herein stated shall be binding upon buyer that him hath holpen, one that they were seek. Story 61 Psychology. Worked fast food warehouse for 3 years before getting a job at the Department of Justice as a program technician. I've been slowly moving up the ranks, every 1 to 1. 5 years. I stood out at every job. I know what it's like to be desperately unemployable. I'm lucky to have a job. Story 62 Art History. Currently working in advertising, and I love it. Art history is more than memorizing paintings and names. It's learning about how and why visual media is created, from big paintings to graffiti. Most of the coursework is actually reading and writing, helping you develop strong, persuasive, and analytical skills, which helps when writing cover letters. Advertising wasn't my intended path when I chose my major, but I find it's helped me just as much as an advertising or graphic design degree could have. It's funny, though, because when I tell people my major in undergrad, they'd say, LOL, you'll never be employed. But now when I tell people what I studied, it's, oh, how well-rounded. Story 63 English Creative Writing Graduate. Translate comic books and fantasy YA books for a living. It's not a lot of money by far, but I get paid to read comic books. Story 64 Classics and Near Eastern Civ undergrad degree, followed up with an MA in Egyptology, and then most of a PhD, all but dissertation in Egyptology, before I decided I no longer wanted to try and be a professor. Now I am very happy as a senior analyst for the federal government. I am vaguely thinking about going to law school, but now make enough to kind of not be worth it. Story 65, have a degree in creative writing, and now I work for a tech company. Just kind of stumbled into it, really, but I'm so glad I did. It's a pretty good gig. I actually use my writing degree more than I thought I would, writing a lot of documentation and stuff. Story 66, I went to art school. Yep, I'm that kid. Went for animation and illustration for a long while I was doing lots of grunt work as a graphic designer, which then bled into social media management. So I was the one making relatable tweets with the freshest memes for really crappy pay. By a strange twist of fate, I'm now working in financial purchasing, and I love it. I went from social media marketing to online store management, which then became product design, and eventually I was promoted to a buyer. My passion for art isn't dead anymore now that it's not my single source of income. Art is my hobby and my side hustle, and it probably always should have been, given that art is so subjective, and the stress of relying on my art to put food on the table is one I don't miss. I don't even regret art school per se. It was a fantastic experience. But man, I wish I had known ages ago that while I love art, I didn't want art to be my career. I could have focused on something more concrete and logic-based as a counterpoint, and probably would be much further along in my career path by now. But hey, it was still my art degree that led me down the path I took to get here. Story 67 English. Still figuring it out. I've worked retail management, data analysis, writing online publications, serving with AmeriCorps, teaching office assistant in ministry at a library. It just keeps going. Feels like Story 68 majored in business management, a degree that means next to nothing because who is hiring managers of anything fresh out of college? Did sales for a year, but found my calling as a project manager in construction, which I guess is relevant, but my degree did nothing to help me. Story 69 English major here. For 8 months, I was still at a grocery store until I got a low-level admin job at university. Fast forward 8 months, and my boss is thinking about leaving, and she wants me to take her place. I found out I really enjoy the student interaction, so I applied to get my master's in higher ed, and I find out if I get accepted today. Story 70 Digital Media degree. Work for a medical company maintaining their product catalog in SAP. Has taught me I work to live and not live to work. Great work-life balance. Am married, own a home, and 2 cars, and I'm not even 30 yet. Not mad. Story 71 Animation. A lot of the developed skills end up being transferable to my current career. While you're given a goal to meet and an overview of what others have done, you have to still figure out how to actually do it. So animation requires planning, discipline, self-direction, and motivation. Long hours progressing the work incrementally. It requires you to have the ability to focus and work towards clear goals. There are many layers to the work, and the smallest detail can cause things to go awry. So you need to be process-oriented, able to multitask, and able to pay attention to high levels of details. There is very little room for procrastination. Time management is a must. Errors will happen anyway. So you need to be adaptable and able to problem solve. After college, I taught myself programming and became a data analyst. Story 72, creative writing, mostly poetry, project manager at a software company. Being able to write concise, information-dense emails and reports is a great skill. Story 73, I have undergrad degrees in English and philosophy. I'm an elementary school special ed teacher now. Love my job. The English and philosophy help a lot because I do quite a bit of document writing. Story 74 BA in theater, MFA in playwriting. During my MFA and now after, I work at university for the sweet benefits, pay, and flexible hours so I can continue to do theater on the side and pay off those sweet loans. Story 75 marketing degree received during the era of the recession recovery, 2011. Absolutely useless degree, especially because I refused to move to the cesspool that was Chicago. I did retail for 5 years, earned my paralegal certificate in the last 5, currently a paralegal, moved states for a better offer. Story 76 communications. Work in logistics. With hindsight, it would be nice to have majored in logistics, but when I was 17, I had no idea what logistics was, nor did my university offer such major anyhow. Story 77, I have a parks administration degree. Took a job at ATT right after college. Within 3 years, I've moved up to a job where I manage government and education accounts. Everyone on my team has 20 years with the company and all make over $100K salary. I make less than half of that, but am in a position to make that in a few years with my raises. Story 78, took psychology, was top of the class. I didn't take the board exam for psychometricians though, since I couldn't afford it. My priority was getting work to pay off loans and other things, spent most of my saved up cash before graduation for job hunting. No company wanted to hire me. Ended up working in a call center. Quit, since I felt stuck. There was no growth whatsoever. It was all about sucking up to your boss and politics was heavy. Still haven't had any luck since I'm still unemployed. It's been a few months. Story 79, am a former English major. Both of my parents were teachers, and I tutored throughout college. So naturally, everyone expected me to become a teacher. I wanted something different, though, and now I work as a volunteer coordinator in a nonprofit that helps survivors of domestic violence. I'm actually hoping to become an advocate soon. Story 80, I have a geography degree and work in a restaurant. I can kind of see myself working more in the hospitality events field since I love working with customers people. Story 81, philosophy and econ double. So partially useless. My family has a successful chain of truck and equipment dealership stereotype 1. Check, but I always felt kind of guilty about joining. It felt like a cop-out at the time. A lot of people in my snob liberal arts school completely relied on their parents and didn't really seem to want to make a difference in anything either. And I thought that was a pretty crappy thing to do. I was always taught to be independent, so I thought I'd go to law school, stereotype 2. Check, and I worked as a paralegal for a year and a half at the federal public defender and hated it. Not the public defender part, just the legal world part. I felt kind of lost and obviously needed a job since I didn't want to rely on my parents, and they weren't going to let me do that for very long anyway. Then I worked in entry-level inside sales for a software firm for 2 years, so basically a glorified telemarketer, and found that I liked talking to people, but I definitely preferred selling something I could physically show a customer in person. I started looking at jobs in the heavy equipment industry and in industrial sales in Atlanta, where I was at the time. I kept getting the runaround from the people who recognized my last name, so I moved back to my hometown and took an opening in truck sales with my dad. It still felt like such a cop-out, and I didn't want to leave the big city, but I knew I was working for someone I could trust, who would help me develop and make me work hard. 6 years later, I don't regret the move one bit. I've since moved into a management position that I really enjoy and presents me with an interesting challenge almost every day. I feel a little underpaid, but that's really my only complaint. I haven't received any special treatment in regards to what's been expected of me, and I'm really proud of some of the things I've been able to change since I joined the company. So yes, my dad is on a dealership, but I enjoy working here, and I've had to earn my place in the business.